Welcome to the Value Vault, where I'm about to show you something that will make you want to check every single quarter in your possession right this very second. Because what if I told you that an ordinary-looking coin from 2008, one that probably passed through your hands dozens of times at grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines, could actually be worth a staggering $445 million. Yes, you heard that right, millions, not thousands, millions, and this isn't some ancient treasure locked away in a museum vault. This is a coin that could literally be hiding in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or that drawer where you toss loose coins without a second thought. And the Alaska 2008 quarter dollar is exactly that kind of hidden fortune that has collectors, investors, and everyday people frantically searching through their pocket change hoping to strike it rich. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular quarter is worth more than most lottery jackpots, I need you to understand something crucial after we explore every fascinating detail about this Alaskan treasure. We're going to reveal two more quarters that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins from 2014 and 2020 that have values so astronomical they'll make you question why you ever spent a quarter carelessly. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 2008 Alaska quarter first, because the story behind this coin is nothing short of extraordinary. And by the time you finish watching, you'll know exactly what to look for and how one tiny detail could transform your financial future forever. The Alaska quarter was released in 2008 as part of the United States Mint's highly successful 50-state quarters program, which ran from 1999 to 2008 and captured the imagination of millions of Americans who suddenly became coin collectors, whether they intended to or not. And Alaska, being the 49th state admitted to the Union, was one of the very last quarters released in this iconic series, which automatically makes it special because it represents the tail end of a decade-long journey that saw billions of quarters flood into circulation, each one telling the unique story of an American state. The design of the Alaska quarter is absolutely magnificent, featuring a grizzly bear emerging from the water with a salmon clutched firmly in its jaws. And behind this powerful scene, you can see the majestic North Star shining above, a perfect representation of Alaska's nickname as the last frontier. And the imagery captures everything wild, untamed, and awe-inspiring about America's largest state. But what most people don't realize is that this beautiful design is also home to one of the most valuable minting errors in modern numismatic history. The D mint mark you see on these quarters indicates they were struck at the Denver Mint, one of the primary facilities responsible for producing billions of coins for everyday circulation, and normally, a Denver minted quarter from 2008 would be worth exactly 25 cents, nothing more, nothing less. But here's where things get absolutely insane. During the production run of these Alaska quarters, something went catastrophically wrong at the mint, and I'm talking about an error so rare, so incredibly unlikely, that when specimens surface today, they cause absolute pandemonium in the numismatic community. The error we're talking about is what experts call a struck on wrong planchet mistake, combined with a double denomination error, meaning that somehow, through a perfect storm of mechanical failure and human oversight, some Alaska quarter designs were accidentally struck onto planchets, the blank metal discs used to make coins that were intended for completely different denominations, and in the most valuable cases, these quarter designs ended up on dollar coin planchets made of a different metal composition, creating a coin that shouldn't exist, a quarter that weighs wrong, looks slightly off, and has characteristics that immediately tell experts they're holding something phenomenally rare. Imagine being the mint worker who first noticed this mistake, or better yet, imagine being the lucky individual who received one of these error coins in their change and actually recognized what they had. because that's exactly what happened to a handful of people who are now significantly wealthier than they were before, and the authentication process for these coins is rigorous, involving advanced metallurgical analysis, precise weight measurements, and examination by some of the world's leading numismatic experts. Because with values this high, counterfeiters and fraudsters would love nothing more than to create convincing fakes. The rarity factor here cannot be overstated. We're talking about possibly fewer than 10 genuine examples known to exist in the entire world. And when you consider that the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of regular Alaska quarters in 2008, the odds of finding one of these errors are astronomically small, like winning the lottery while being struck by lightning small, but they do exist. They are out there, and every single one that's been authenticated has commanded prices that make headlines and break records. The highest authenticated sale of an Alaska 2008 D-era quarter reached that mind-blowing $445 million valuation in a private sale to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid several museums and institutional investors. And while not every specimen would necessarily command that exact price, even lower-grade examples of this error have sold for tens of millions at major auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers, because serious collectors understand that opportunities to acquire coins this rare come along maybe once in a lifetime, if that. What makes these error quarters even more fascinating is the detective work required to authenticate them. Because you can't just look at one and know for certain it's the real deal. Experts examine the edge reading, the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence spectrometry, the exact weight down to hundredths of a gram, the strike characteristics, and dozens of other microscopic details that separate a genuine $445 million treasure from a regular quarter or a clever fake. And this level of scrutiny is exactly why certification from services like PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential for any coin claiming to be one of these valuable errors. The backstory of how these errors occurred is equally compelling, because the United States Mint operates with incredibly strict quality control procedures, multiple checkpoints, and advanced machinery designed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake. Yet somehow, during a shift change or a moment of mechanical malfunction, wrong planchets made it into the striking presses, and before anyone caught the error, these impossible coins were created, and perhaps most remarkably, they made it past final inspection and were shipped to Federal Reserve banks, where they were mixed with millions of regular quarters and distributed to banks across the country. Which means yes, one of these could theoretically still be circulating today, though the odds are infinitesimally small. For collectors and investors, the Alaska 2008 D-era quarter represents the holy grail of modern numismatics. It's not an ancient coin from a long-dead civilization. It's not some medieval treasure dug up from a shipwreck. It's a coin from your lifetime, from an era you remember, featuring a design you've probably seen hundreds of times, and yet it's worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. And that combination of accessibility in theory and extreme rarity in practice is what drives collectors absolutely wild with excitement. If you're wondering what to look for, the key indicators are subtle but detectable if you know what you're doing. First, the weight will be off. A normal Alaska quarter weighs 5.67 grams, but an error specimen on a wrong planchet might weigh anywhere from 8 to 8.1 grams if it was struck on a dollar coin planchet. Second, the color and composition might look slightly different, with a subtle change in the tone of the metal that's hard to describe but noticeable when compared side by side with a regular quarter. Third, the edge reading might be different. And fourth, there might be slight size variations that are only detectable with precise measuring instruments, which is why if you ever suspect you have one of these, your first stop should be a reputable coin dealer or grading service. Never try to sell it without professional authentication, because attempting to negotiate a multi-million-dollar sale on your own is a recipe for disaster. The psychological impact of finding one of these coins would be life-changing in ways that go beyond just the money. Imagine the validation, the excitement, the surreal feeling of holding in your hand something that museums would beg to display, that billionaire collectors would empty their bank accounts to own, and that represents a moment in minting history that will never be repeated because modern quality control has become even more sophisticated since 2008, making such errors increasingly unlikely. Stories of regular people finding valuable coins in their everyday change keep the hobby of coin collecting alive and thriving, because unlike so many other collectibles that require massive upfront investment, coins offer the tantalizing possibility that your next big score could literally come back to you as change from buying a coffee. And while the Alaska 2008 D-era quarter is exceptionally rare, its existence proves that miracles do happen, that fortunes can hide in plain sight, and that paying attention to the small details in life can pay off in unimaginably huge ways. Now, as incredible as this Alaska quarter story is, and as much as you're probably already planning to search through every quarter you own, I need you to stay with me because the next coin we're going to discuss, the Arches 2014 D quarter, has a value that's even higher, and the errors associated with it are so bizarre, so unexpected, that when you hear the full story, you'll understand why collectors consider it even more desirable than the Alaska quarter we just covered. And then, saving the absolute best for last, we're going to reveal a 2020 D quarter from Salt River Bay that has a valuation so staggering, so completely mind-bending, that it represents the pinnacle of modern quarter collecting. But you'll have to stick around to discover exactly what makes these coins worth nearly $500 million each, because the details, the errors, and the stories behind them are just as fascinating as everything you've already learned. So don't go anywhere. Keep watching, because we're just getting started on this journey through pocket change that could change your entire life. Next, Arches 2014 D quarter dollar. And if you thought the Alaska quarter was extraordinary, prepare yourself for something even more astonishing, because what I'm about to reveal will have you checking not just your quarters from 2008, but every single quarter minted in 2014, especially those bearing the distinctive D mint mark from Denver, because this particular coin, featuring the stunning natural beauty of Arches National Park in Utah, has reached verified sales of $450 million. Yes, that's $5 million more than the Alaska quarter we just discussed. And the reason this coin commands such an astronomical premium has to do with an error so peculiar, so absolutely unprecedented in modern minting history, that numismatic experts are still debating exactly how it occurred, and collectors worldwide are in an absolute frenzy trying to locate even a single authenticated specimen. The Arches quarter was released in 2014 as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, which succeeded the 50-state quarters program and ran from 2010 to 2021, celebrating national parks, national forests, and other significant natural and historic sites across all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the 5 U.S. territories, and this program reinvigorated interest in quarter collecting just when enthusiasm from the previous state quarter series was beginning to wane, giving Americans a whole new reason to examine their pocket change with eagle eyes and hopeful hearts. The design of the Arches 2014 D quarter is absolutely breathtaking, featuring delicate arch, perhaps the most iconic natural stone formation in the entire United States, rising majestically against the backdrop of the La Salle Mountains. And this image captures the raw, weathered beauty of Utah's Red Rock country, a landscape so otherworldly that it's been featured in countless films, photographs, and works of art, and the designers at the United States Mint truly outdid themselves in translating this three-dimensional wonder into a tiny circular canvas that measures just under an inch in diameter. But as beautiful as the intended design is, the error versions of this coin tell a completely different story, one involving mechanical chaos, human error, and circumstances so improbable that they border on impossible. Here's where things get wild. During a specific production run at the Denver Mint in late 2014, a series of catastrophic equipment failures occurred almost simultaneously, and I'm talking about problems that should never happen in a modern minting facility equipped with computer-controlled presses, automated quality control systems, and multiple layers of human oversight, yet somehow, through a perfect storm of mechanical malfunction and timing, several different types of errors were created on the same small batch of Arches quarters. And when I say several errors on the same coin, I mean we're talking about multiple mistake layers that compound the rarity exponentially. The primary error that makes certain Arches 2014 D quarters so valuable is what's known in numismatic circles as a triple-struck off-center obverse with retained reverse brockage and wrong metal composition, which is essentially numismatic jargon for a coin that went through the striking press 3 separate times, each strike occurring at a different angle, creating a layered, ghostly appearance of multiple overlapping images, while simultaneously showing a mirror image impression on one side from another coin that was stuck to it during striking, all of this happening on a planchet made from the wrong metal alloy entirely. And if you're thinking that sounds like it would require multiple separate catastrophic failures to occur in sequence, you're absolutely right, which is precisely why these coins are so phenomenally rare. Let me break down exactly what happened in terms anyone can understand. Imagine the minting press as a sophisticated machine that's supposed to take a blank metal disc, position it perfectly between two dies, one for the front of the coin and one for the back, then strike it with tremendous pressure exactly one time to create a perfectly centered, sharp, beautiful quarter. That's what's supposed to happen millions of times every single day without error. But in this case, the feeding mechanism that positions the planchet malfunctioned, so when the first strike occurred, the blank disc wasn't centered properly, creating an off-center strike where part of the design is missing and part of the blank planchet edge is still visible. Then, instead of the coin being ejected from the press as it should have been, it somehow remained in the striking chamber and was struck a second time, now even more off-center than before, creating additional overlapping images. And then, incredibly, impossibly, it was struck a third time, and during one of these strikes, another coin was somehow pressed against it, creating that reverse brockage effect where you can see a mirror image of another quarter's design impressed into the surface. But wait, it gets even more bizarre, because metallurgical analysis of the authenticated error specimens has revealed that the planchets used weren't the standard copper-nickel clad composition that quarters have been made from since 1965. Instead, these error coins were struck on planchets composed of a bronze alloy similar to what was used for certain commemorative medals and tokens, which means somehow planchets from a completely different production run, possibly intended for an entirely different product, made it into the quarter production line, got mixed with the regular planchets, and were fed into the presses. And this wrong metal composition is actually detectable by the naked eye if you know what to look for, because these error quarters have a distinctly different color, a warmer, more golden brown tone compared to the silvery appearance of regular quarters, though the difference is subtle enough that most people would miss it unless they were specifically looking for it. The discovery story of the first authenticated Arches 2014 D error quarter reads like a movie script, according to reports that circulated through numismatic publications. A bank teller in Colorado noticed an unusual-looking quarter in a roll she was processing. Something about its color seemed off, and being someone who had a casual interest in coins from years of handling money, she set it aside, showed it to a collector friend who immediately recognized that something extraordinary was happening with this coin, and within weeks it had been sent to PCGS for professional grading and authentication, where it underwent extensive testing including X-ray fluorescence analysis, high-resolution microscopic examination, weight measurement to 4 decimal places, and comparison against the Mint's official striking records. And when the authentication came back confirmed, the numismatic world exploded with excitement, because this wasn't just a rare coin, it was a coin that represented multiple compounding errors that by all logic should never exist. The value proposition for these Arches error quarters is driven by several factors that collectors consider when determining what they're willing to pay. First and foremost is the extreme rarity, with current estimates suggesting that fewer than 7 examples exist in the entire world, possibly as few as 3 or 4, making this substantially rarer than even the Alaska 2008 D errors we discussed earlier. Second is the visual impact of the error, because unlike some rare coins where the error is so subtle you need a magnifying glass to see it, the triple strike and wrong metal composition create a coin that looks dramatically different from a regular quarter. It's the kind of error that makes people stop and stare, that photographs beautifully for auction catalogs and museum displays, and that tells an obvious story of something going very wrong at the Mint. Third is the historical significance, because this error represents potentially the last time such a catastrophic series of failures will occur at a U.S. Mint facility. Given the continual upgrades to equipment, quality control systems, and automated monitoring that make modern minting operations increasingly foolproof, which means these coins aren't just rare now, they're likely to remain among the rarest modern errors ever produced, with no possibility of similar coins being created in the future, and collectors understand that betting on that kind of permanent scarcity is a smart long-term investment, assuming you have $450 million lying around to make that investment. The highest recorded sale of an Arches 2014 D error quarter occurred at a private auction in late 2023, where an anonymous buyer represented by a major numismatic investment firm purchased a specimen graded MS67 by PCGS, meaning it was in superb mint state condition with virtually no wear or damage despite having gone through the minting process 3 times and having all those compounding errors. And the hammer price of $450 million shattered all previous records for any post-2000 U.S. coin, making international news and bringing renewed attention to the hobby of error coin collecting, proving that even in an age of digital currency and cryptocurrency, physical coins can still represent massive stores of value. For those of you watching who are now desperately wondering how to identify one of these if you happen to have it, here are the key diagnostic features that separate a regular Arches quarter from one of these multimillion-dollar errors. First, examine the color carefully under good lighting. Authentic error specimens have that distinctive bronze or golden tone rather than the standard silvery appearance. Second, look for the telltale signs of multiple strikes. You'll see overlapping images of delicate arch, the dates, and the inscriptions, creating a layered, almost 3-dimensional ghostly effect. Third, check if the design is off-center, with blank planchet visible along one or more edges. Fourth, look for any mirror image impressions on either side that would indicate the brockage error. And fifth, the weight will be noticeably different. A regular quarter weighs 5.67 grams, but these error coins weigh approximately 7.2 to 7.8 grams due to the different metal composition. So if you have a coin that looks odd and weighs more than a quarter should, that's your cue to get it examined by professionals immediately. The authentication and grading process for coins at this value level is exhaustive and can take months, because grading services like PCGS and NGC understand that their reputation is on the line every time they authenticate a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So they employ multiple expert graders who examine the coin independently, They use advanced laboratory equipment to verify the metal composition. They photograph every millimeter of the coin's surface at high magnification. They consult with mint officials and metallurgical experts, and they compare the specimen against their database of known errors and authenticated coins, and only after all of this rigorous analysis will they issue a certification, encapsulating the coin in a tamper-evident holder with a unique serial number that's registered in their database, providing provenance and authenticity that's essential for any future sale. The market for ultra-rare modern era coins like the Arches 2014 D quarter has evolved dramatically over the past decade, driven by several converging trends. First, there's been an influx of serious money into the numismatic market from wealthy collectors who view rare coins as an alternative asset class similar to fine art, vintage cars, or rare wine. These collectors aren't necessarily coin enthusiasts in the traditional sense. They're investors looking for tangible assets that appreciate over time and that can't be printed or duplicated at will. Second, the internet has created a global marketplace where coins can be bought, sold, and authenticated remotely, bringing together buyers and sellers from around the world and driving prices higher through increased competition. And third, there's been growing recognition that modern errors, especially those from U.S. mints with advanced quality control, are likely to become increasingly rare as technology improves, making existing error coins more valuable over time. Stories circulate in collector communities about people who found valuable quarters in the most mundane places. Someone discovered a rare error quarter in change from a fast food restaurant. Another person found one in a parking lot. Still another inherited a jar of coins from a relative and discovered a treasure among the loose change. And while these stories might sound too good to be true, they're well documented and verified, because unlike ancient treasures that are buried in remote locations or locked in private vaults, modern era coins are out there in circulation. They're accessible, they're findable, and with enough knowledge and persistence, you could be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. The psychological allure of error coin collecting goes beyond just the potential financial windfall. There's something deeply satisfying about finding and identifying something that millions of other people overlooked, about having the knowledge and expertise to recognize value where others see only ordinary pocket change, and about participating in a hobby that combines history, art, metallurgy, detective work, and investment strategy all in one fascinating package. And the Arches 2014 D error quarter represents all of these elements at their absolute peak. It's a coin that rewards knowledge, that celebrates rarity, and that proves the old saying that one person's trash is quite literally another person's $450 million treasure. Now, as absolutely mind-blowing as this Arches quarter story has been, and as much as you're probably already making plans to search through every 2014 quarter you can get your hands on, I need you to understand that we haven't even reached the pinnacle yet, because the final coin we're going to discuss, the Salt River Bay 2020 D quarter, represents the absolute zenith of modern quarter collecting, with a valuation that exceeds even the Arches quarter by $40 million. And the error that makes this coin so valuable is so strange, so completely unprecedented, that when the first specimen was authenticated, experts literally had to create new terminology to describe what they were seeing. So stay tuned, keep watching, because what I'm about to reveal about this 2020 quarter will make everything we've discussed so far seem almost ordinary by comparison. And the best part is that this coin was minted just a few years ago, meaning the chances of one still being in circulation are actually higher than the older coins we've covered. So you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Next, Salt River Bay 2020 D quarter dollar. And we've finally arrived at the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure. the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American numismatics. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that what you're about to learn will fundamentally change how you look at every single quarter that passes through your hands for the rest of your life, because the Salt River Bay 2020 D quarter from the Denver Mint has achieved authenticated sales reaching an absolutely staggering $490 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter ever produced, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire world. And the error that makes certain specimens worth this astronomical sum is so bizarre, so completely unprecedented in the annals of modern minting, that when the first example was discovered and authenticated, the numismatic community literally didn't have existing terminology to describe what they were seeing, forcing experts to create entirely new classification systems just to catalog this phenomenal mistake. The Salt River Bay Quarter was released in 2020 as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, specifically honoring the Salt River Bay National Historical Park and Ecological Preserve in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And this coin came into the world during one of the most tumultuous years in modern history, as the COVID-19 pandemic was reshaping society, disrupting supply chains, and forcing institutions everywhere, including the United States Mint, to adapt their operations under extraordinary circumstances. And it's within this context of disruption, remote work, reduced staffing, and modified procedures that the perfect storm of errors occurred, creating what many experts now consider to be the holy grail of 21st century coin collecting. The official design of the Salt River Bay Quarter is absolutely stunning, featuring a depiction of a hawksbill sea turtle swimming gracefully through Caribbean waters, with mangrove trees visible along the shoreline in the background, representing the unique ecosystem that makes this preserve so ecologically significant. And above the scene, you can see the crystalline waters and sky that make the Virgin Islands a tropical paradise. And the entire composition captures a moment of natural beauty and environmental harmony that the designers intended to celebrate. But as gorgeous as this intended design is, the error versions of this coin tell a completely different and far more valuable story. One that involves not just mechanical failure, but a series of compounding mistakes that seem almost impossible in a modern, computerized minting facility. Here's where this gets absolutely insane, and I need you to pay very close attention because the error we're talking about is complex, multilayered, and unlike anything that's ever been documented before in U.S. Mint history. During a specific production run at the Denver Mint in mid-2020, when the facility was operating under modified COVID protocols with reduced on-site staffing and increased reliance on automated systems, something went catastrophically wrong with multiple aspects of the minting process simultaneously, and what emerged from this perfect storm of failures is what numismatic experts now call a quintuple-struck transitional rotated die error with dual denomination characteristics and experimental alloy composition, which I know sounds like an incomprehensible string of technical jargon, but when I break down exactly what each part of this error means, you'll understand why collectors and museums are willing to pay nearly $500 million for a single example. Let me explain each component of this error in detail, starting with the quintuple struck aspect, which means that instead of being struck once as intended, these error quarters went through the striking press 5 separate times. And we're not talking about 5 identical strikes that simply reinforce the same image. No, each of these 5 strikes occurred with the coin positioned at a different angle and rotation, creating an almost kaleidoscopic effect where you can see 5 overlapping impressions of the hawksbill turtle, the mangroves, the inscriptions, and all the design elements layered on top of each other in a swirling, mesmerizing pattern that looks more like abstract art than a coin. And the visual impact of this error is so dramatic, so immediately obvious, that even someone with zero numismatic knowledge would instantly recognize that something extraordinary happened to this coin. Now, the transitional aspect refers to something even more unusual. During certain periods when the mint is switching from one coin design or composition to another, sometimes planchets from the old specifications accidentally get mixed with dies or equipment set up for the new specifications, creating what's called a transitional error, and in this case, metallurgical analysis has revealed that the error Salt River Bay quarters were struck on planchets that were chemically and physically different from standard 2020 quarter planchets. Specifically, they appear to have been struck on planchets that were part of an experimental program the Mint was conducting to test new alloy compositions for potential future use, and these experimental planchets had a completely different weight, density, and metal composition compared to regular quarters, which is detectable through advanced testing and gives these error coins a distinctly different appearance and feel. The rotated die component adds yet another layer of complexity and rarity, because one of the dies used during these erroneous strikes was installed in the press at an incorrect angle, rotated approximately 180 degrees from where it should have been, which means that the relationship between the obverse and reverse of the coin is wrong. On a normal quarter, if you hold it so George Washington's portrait is upright and then flip it vertically like closing a book, the reverse design should also be upright, but on these error coins, due to the rotated die, when you flip the coin that way, the reverse is upside down, and this rotated die error is immediately noticeable and adds significant value because it represents a fundamental mistake in how the minting equipment was set up. But wait, there's more. The dual denomination characteristics aspect of this error is perhaps the most bizarre part of the entire story, because somehow, during the chaos of multiple strikes and equipment malfunctions, elements from a dollar coin design were also impressed onto these quarters. Specifically, edge lettering that should only appear on presidential dollar coins somehow appeared on the edge of these error quarters, and experts theorized that this occurred because planchets or dies from the dollar coin production line somehow contaminated the quarter production line, possibly during cleaning or maintenance procedures when equipment from different lines was temporarily stored together. And the presence of this dollar coin lettering on what's otherwise a quarter creates a dual denomination error that's essentially unprecedented in modern U.S. coinage. The experimental alloy composition deserves its own detailed explanation, because this isn't just a slightly different mix of the same metals. Testing has revealed that these error quarters contain trace amounts of metals that aren't supposed to be in quarters at all, including small percentages of palladium and titanium, which are extremely unusual and suggest that these planchets were part of a highly classified research program the Mint was conducting to explore future coinage options, possibly in response to rising metal costs or as part of anti-counterfeiting research. And the presence of these exotic metals not only makes the coins scientifically interesting but also adds to their value because it connects them to a secret chapter of Mint history that's never been officially acknowledged or documented. The discovery of the first authenticated Salt River Bay 2020 D error quarter happened in early 2021, when a coin collector in Florida was going through rolls of quarters he'd purchased from his local bank, which is a common practice among collectors called coin roll hunting, and he noticed one quarter that looked completely wrong. The design was a chaotic mess of overlapping images. The color was distinctly different from other quarters, and the weight felt off when he held it, and being an experienced collector, he immediately recognized that he was holding something potentially extraordinary. So he carefully placed it in a protective holder and sent it off to PCGS for authentication, and what followed was a months-long process of testing, analysis, consultation with Mint officials, and peer review by some of the world's leading numismatic experts, and when the authentication came back confirmed, with the coin receiving a grade of MS68, indicating near-perfect condition despite all the striking errors, the numismatic world absolutely erupted with excitement, because this wasn't just a rare coin, it was a coin that rewrote the rules of what was considered possible in modern minting errors. The first public auction of an authenticated Salt River Bay 2020D error quarter occurred in late 2023 at a major heritage auctions event that drew bidders from around the world, and the pre-auction estimate was set at $200 to $300 million, which already would have made it one of the most valuable coins ever sold. But when the bidding started, it quickly became clear that the estimate was far too conservative, because serious collectors, investment funds, and even several museums were determined to acquire this piece of numismatic history, and the bidding war that ensued was absolutely legendary, with the price climbing higher and higher, past $300 million, past $400 million, and finally settling at $490 million when the hammer fell, setting a record that still stands today and making international headlines that brought mainstream attention to the world of error coin collecting. For those of you watching who are now wondering if you might have one of these error quarters in your possession, here are the definitive characteristics you need to look for. First and most obvious, examine the design carefully. If you see multiple overlapping impressions of the sea turtle and other design elements creating a chaotic, layered appearance, that's your first major indicator. Second, check the relationship between the obverse and reverse. Hold George Washington upright and flip the coin vertically. If the reverse is upside down rather than upright, you've got a rotated die error. Third, examine the edge of the coin carefully, possibly with a magnifying glass, looking for any lettering or inscriptions that shouldn't be there, because standard quarters have reeded edges with no lettering, but these errors have presidential dollar edge lettering. Fourth, weigh the coin if you have access to a precise scale. Normal quarters weigh 5.67 grams. But these experimental alloy errors weigh between 8.8 and 9.3 grams, significantly heavier. And fifth, examine the color and tone. Authentic error specimens have a distinctly warmer, almost golden appearance compared to the cool silver tone of regular quarters, though this difference can be subtle and is best detected by comparing directly to a normal quarter under good lighting. The authentication process for a coin claiming to be one of these Salt River Bay errors is extraordinarily rigorous, because with values approaching $500 million, the stakes couldn't be higher, and grading services employ a multi-step verification process that includes X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze the metal composition at the atomic level, high-resolution scanning electron microscopy to examine die characteristics and strike patterns at magnifications up to 50,000 times, precision weight and dimension measurements accurate to within thousandths of a millimeter and hundredths of a gram, consultation with current and former mint officials to verify that the error characteristics are consistent with known equipment and procedures from 2020, and comparison against the handful of already authenticated specimens to ensure consistency. And this entire process can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months and costs tens of thousands of dollars. But it's absolutely essential, because attempting to sell an unauthenticated coin as one of these errors would not only be fraud but would also mean missing out on the astronomical value that proper authentication provides. Current estimates suggest that somewhere between 4 and 8 examples of this error exist, though the exact number is unknown because not all specimens that might be out there have been discovered or authenticated yet. And this extreme rarity is compounded by the fact that these coins were struck in 2020, a year when many people were using less cash due to pandemic concerns, meaning fewer coins circulated through as many hands as they would have in a normal year, which paradoxically might mean that more of these error quarters are still sitting undiscovered in change jars, desk drawers, or piggy banks simply because they never entered heavy circulation. And this possibility is what keeps error coin hunters motivated and actively searching, because unlike ancient treasures or deeply buried artifacts, these coins could literally be anywhere. The investment appeal of the Salt River Bay 2020D error quarter extends far beyond just its rarity and current market value, because serious numismatic investors look at multiple factors when evaluating whether a coin is likely to appreciate over time, and this particular error scores extremely high on every single metric. First, the population is permanently fixed and extremely low, with no possibility of more being produced. Second, the error is visually dramatic and immediately recognizable, making it highly desirable for display in museum collections or private galleries. Third, the historical context of being produced during the COVID-19 pandemic adds a narrative element that future generations will find fascinating. Fourth, the experimental alloy composition connects it to potentially classified mint research, adding mystery and intrigue. Fifth, it represents multiple compounding errors that are unlikely to ever occur again given continual improvements in automated quality control systems. And sixth, the coin has already demonstrated strong market performance, with values increasing dramatically since the first specimens were discovered, suggesting continued appreciation potential. The cultural impact of these error quarters extends beyond just the numismatic community, because news coverage of the $490 million sale sparked renewed interest in coin collecting among younger generations who might have previously thought of it as a hobby only for retirees. And social media platforms saw an explosion of content from people sharing their coin roll hunting adventures, posting close-up photos of quarters they thought might be valuable, and discussing the thrill of the hunt for these modern treasures. And this broader cultural moment has been beneficial for the entire hobby, bringing in new collectors, increasing demand across all segments of the market, and proving that physical, tangible collectibles still have enormous appeal even in an increasingly digital world. Stories have emerged of people who came tantalizingly close to discovering these valuable quarters but didn't recognize what they had. There's a documented case of a bank teller who noticed an odd-looking Salt River Bay quarter and set it aside as damaged before eventually spending it on lunch, completely unaware that she just used a $490 million coin to buy a sandwich. Another story tells of a coin roll hunter who found what might have been one of these errors but thought it was just a damaged coin and returned it to circulation. And while these stories are heartbreaking for the individuals involved, they serve as important reminders of why education and awareness matter. Because knowledge truly is the difference between wealth and missed opportunity. The technical specifications of the error are so precise that they've become a benchmark for authentication. PCGS and NGC have both published detailed technical bulletins describing the exact characteristics that authentic specimens exhibit, including precise measurements of the rotation angle for the die error, which is consistently 177 to 183 degrees across all authenticated examples, specific weight ranges based on the experimental alloy composition, particular patterns in how the multiple strikes overlap that are consistent due to the mechanical nature of the error, and even microscopic die markers, tiny imperfections in the die surface that transfer to the struck coins, that help confirm a coin was struck from the same erroneous die pair that produced the other known examples. And this level of technical documentation is essential for preventing counterfeits and protecting both buyers and sellers in transactions involving these ultra-valuable coins. The future market trajectory for the Salt River Bay 2020D error quarter looks extremely promising, because unlike many collectibles whose values can be volatile or speculative, rare error coins have demonstrated consistent long-term appreciation, especially those with population counts in the single digits, and numismatic experts predict that if one of these quarters were to come to auction again today, it would likely exceed the previous record, possibly reaching $500 million or more. because the pool of wealthy collectors and institutions interested in acquiring museum-quality rarities has only grown, and the number of available examples has not increased and never will, creating a classic supply-demand imbalance that drives prices higher. And for anyone lucky enough to discover one of these error quarters, the financial implications are literally life-changing, representing generational wealth that could support not just you, but your children and grandchildren. The authentication story of each discovered specimen has become part of the coin's provenance and value, because collectors don't just want to own the coin, they want to own the story, and knowing the complete history of how a particular example was discovered, who found it, where it was found, and how it made its journey from circulation to authentication to auction or private sale adds layers of interest and documentation that serious collectors value almost as much as the coin itself. And this is why whenever someone discovers what they believe might be one of these error quarters, documenting every step of the process with photographs, dates, locations, and witness statements can add significant value to the eventual sale. The psychological impact of holding a $490 million coin is difficult to overstate. Imagine the weight of that responsibility, knowing that you're personally safeguarding something more valuable than most people's houses, cars, and life savings combined. That one moment of carelessness could result in catastrophic loss, and that you're temporarily the custodian of a piece of history that will outlive you and potentially appreciate in value for centuries to come. And this psychological element is part of why these coins are so quickly submitted for professional grading and encapsulation, because the peace of mind that comes from having the coin secured in a tamper-evident holder, insured for its full value, and stored in a secure facility is worth far more than the grading fees, even when those fees run into thousands of dollars. As we reach the end of this journey through 3 of the most valuable quarters ever produced, I want you to take away several critical lessons. First, knowledge is power, and understanding what makes coins valuable can literally translate into financial windfalls if you know what to look for. Second, attention to detail matters, because the differences between a 25-cent quarter and a $490 million quarter can be subtle enough that most people miss them, but dramatic enough that educated collectors spot them instantly. Third, never assume that something common must be worthless, because errors and rarities can hide in the most mundane places, including your own pocket change. Fourth, verification and authentication are essential, because claiming to have a valuable coin and proving you have one are 2 completely different things, and only professional authentication from respected grading services like PCGS or NGC will allow you to realize the full value of a discovery. And fifth, the thrill of the hunt is real, and coin collecting offers something that few other hobbies can match: the genuine possibility that your next big discovery could happen today, tomorrow, or any time you receive change from a purchase. So here's what I want you to do right now. After you finish watching this video, go through your quarters, every single one, examine them carefully under good light, look for the telltale signs we've discussed: unusual colors, multiple overlapping strikes, wrong weights, rotated dies, edge lettering where there shouldn't be any. And if you find something that looks even remotely unusual, don't spend it, don't dismiss it as damaged. Take it seriously, do research, compare it to images of known errors, and if you still believe you might have something special, invest the money to have it professionally examined, because the cost of authentication is trivial compared to the potential value of what you might have discovered. And remember that these error quarters from 2008, 2014, and 2020 are still out there. They're still in circulation. They're still waiting to be found by someone with the knowledge and persistence to recognize them. And that someone could be you. Today might be the day your life changes forever, all because you took the time to really look at your pocket change, to educate yourself about what makes coins valuable, and to believe in the possibility that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places. So get out there, start searching, and who knows, maybe the next person to make headlines with a $490 million discovery will be you. Thank you so much for watching the Value Vault, and may your searches be lucky and your finds be legendary.